Summer 2017, I was working at a pharmacy, and I had been there for 4 years. A new staff pharmacist around my age, 28 at the time, was hired. He seemed odd, but I was nice to him because everyone else was rude to him immediately, and I felt bad. He asked me way too many questions, some I answered and others crossed boundaries, questions about ex-boyfriends. Fast forward a month, he said that he was moving. He lived on the east side of my city, and he said that he was moving to the west side where I live. He said that he actually found a house near the intersection of where I live. I asked him what street and he wouldn't tell me. He also said that the owner will live there for a few more months, so I forgot about it. A few months later, my mom and stepdad told me they met our new neighbor. Our house is one house away from the intersecting street. This house is on the intersecting street, so we are one house away but the backyards connect. My mom said he seemed like a really nice young man. The next time I worked with him, I asked if that was him and he said no. I let it go for a little bit. Then another time he started asking me questions, describing my backyard and asking if my street name started with the letter that it did. So he admitted it was him. I asked him how he knew it was my house. He said he saw me in the backyard. He decided not to say anything to me. The next few months were weird. I was still friendly with him as a coworker, but he crossed some boundaries. He knew my birthday was coming up. My birthday and address are in the pharmacy database, and my brother was asking for ideas for what to get for me. I wanted a certain phone case, so I was browsing on my phone to send my brother links to the ones I wanted. He would always look over my shoulder when I was on my phone. He saw the type of phone case, he got me the phone case and a $150 preloaded Visa gift card. I told him, in a very professional manner, that I felt the gift was inappropriate and probably against company policy. I walked over to his mailbox while he was at work to return it. He kept putting it back in my mailbox with messages of begging me to accept it because I make him so happy. I ended up giving it away. Not much longer after that, I took my coworker to the zoo. I had some of it on my Snapchat story. He kept messaging me on Snapchat asking questions about it, and it was bothering me, so I blocked him. After that, he called my mother and told her that he needed to talk to her. He told her he needed to come over and talk to her, so she invited him in, and they talked. I was very alarmed by this, but she thought it was endearing. I told him once again at work that he crossed boundaries, and he said that he does everything that he does because he cares about me. He didn't understand where I was coming from at all. Those were the most standout things he has done. Also, a lot of pestering about, tell me who your boyfriend is, and trying to look at pictures on my phone to figure it out, going through coworkers' phones and reading their conversations with me, even impersonating them while I was not at work to get info. One time he even cornered me at work and wouldn't let me leave until I told him what characteristics I look for in a guy. He also was mad at me when I got a birth control prescription filled, even though it was being used to correct hormonal problems from another birth control. I started being mean to him at work because I couldn't take it anymore. He then told me that I was treating him that way because he is a nice guy who cares about me and that I am looking for a jerk. It became a very hostile work environment, and I left about 2 months ago. I haven't heard from him at all since leaving, but I saw my former coworker last week at a get-together, and she said that he is trying to get her to tell him where I work now. He told her that he sees me getting into my car every morning, so he knows I have a job. I told my mom this, and she didn't take it seriously. She never believed I was in danger. I would just like to get an outside perspective. When I come home late, I run to the door, and if no one is home, I will wait to take a shower. I'm still scared. When I was about 16 or so years ago, my family moved from a rough part of the state to a nice city. It was typical suburban bliss, white fences, picturesque homes, all with nice, lush yards. My sister and I were about 12 and 4 when we moved. Our next-door neighbor, Gene, was an older man in his late 60s, early 70s who had just recently married Catherine, another woman in her mid-60s. My parents were friendly with Gene and got the notion that Catherine and Gene had been married before, which wasn't a big deal, but plays into the story later. I always got the creepy vibe from Gene. One of my best friends lived in the house behind me, so I often passed Gene's house to visit her house. Gene's favorite hobby was to sit on a lawn chair in his driveway, and every time I passed, he made it a point to talk to me, more so than the friendly neighborhood talk. One time I was about 6, I was walking past and he called me over. "Come look at these pictures," Gene said, and I cautiously headed over. It was a thick stack of pictures of children, not child porn or anything, but just children at play. Even at 6, I thought it was a little strange. Why was an adult showing me pictures of other children? I mentioned it to my parents later, and they told me that it was most likely Jean's grandchildren, and being only 6, I didn't think much of it. Fast forward a bit, and this is where the story gets really creepy. I avoided Jean as much as I could in this time period, and, save for the occasional creepy encounter, it was fine living next door to him. This occurred when I was around 12, and my sister was 19 or so. My sister developed fairly young, and by 19 was extremely curvy. At 12, I hadn't even really developed yet. I was still a beanpole. On hot summer days, my sister and I liked to play badminton with the sprinklers spraying us in the backyard. Since we were getting wet, we wore our bikinis to play. It was innocent and fun, and we played almost daily. A few days after we played, my sister pulled me aside. "Gene's in his camper," she whispered to me. I looked over. Gene had a massive trailer that was so big, the windows could still probably peek over our fence. Sure enough, the door was shut, but the windows to the camper were open, and Gene was watching us play badminton in our bikinis. This occurred almost daily when we were playing. Gene would come out, watch us play in his air-conditioned trailer, and shortly after we went in, he would too. Then one day, we were playing, knowing Gene was watching us but somehow hoping we were mistaken, when Gene popped his head up over the fence. My older sister had a heart attack but cautiously walked over to Gene. "Is this your birdie?" Gene asked, holding up a bright purple birdie. "It came over my fence." My sister shook her head. "That's not our birdie. Our birdies are only blue and green," she told him. We had bought them in a set. We had no purple birdies. "Well, I've got a bunch of them over here. Come get them," Gene said. My sister politely declined, then told me we were done playing for the day. My sister and I instantly knew that Gene watched us play, then had gone out, purchased a set full of birdies to talk to us and, most likely, lure us over to his house. After that, we stopped playing badminton. We later learned that Gene had kissed one of our neighbors on the mouth right in front of her husband, and that Catherine wasn't his second wife, she was his 8th, and he ended up divorcing Catherine to marry a woman in her 20s. He moved away from next door, and my sister and I have never been so relieved. I'm a petite 20-year-old female who grew up in a small town, so small that there were only 100 people in my graduating class. I'm a softie, and I really like to help people who are in need. On top of that, I'm very polite. I moved to a bigger town a little over a year ago with my boyfriend. We moved to a small trailer park right outside of downtown that consisted of 9 trailers. The owner of the park was a 70-year-old lady who talked a lot and was very sweet. She mentioned that she was very fond of the 2 brothers who shared a trailer in the park. Fast forward 4 months later. I get caught up talking to one of the brothers outside. We'll call him Joe. Joe is a 56-year-old bald man around 6 feet tall who has a huge potbelly and talks about himself a lot. I felt bad for him because it seemed like he was lonely, so I stood there as he talked about himself and smiled and nodded politely. Then Joe mentions that he drives a taxi, not for a business but on the side, and needs some advertising. This struck my interest because I really like graphic design, and I agreed to make him some business cards, shirts, hats, etc. online. We exchanged numbers, and I went inside. A few days later, I texted Joe to let him know I was finished with the designs. He said he would come to my place because he didn't have internet to look at what I had finished. I really didn't see Joe as a threat because of his age, and I felt I could outrun him if needed due to his weight. Joe came over on a Saturday while my boyfriend was at work. I was unshowered and still in my pajamas, which was a tank top and sweatpants. He plopped down on the couch and I sat beside him with my laptop. I showed him what I came up with and he started going off topic, which wasn't a surprise since he seemed like a lonely man. As he talked, I leaned back into the couch, which caused my tank top to slide up and reveal a bit of my lower tummy. I didn't notice this until Joe poked my stomach. I giggled shyly and pulled my tank top back down. "Oh, come on, you have a cute belly," he said as he pulled my shirt back up. I pulled it down and sat up quickly. I tried to get back onto the topic. I was sitting cross-legged with my laptop in my lap. I leaned forward as I talked and pointed to my laptop. Suddenly, Joe's hand is reaching for my chest. "You have something on your chest," he said as he tried to wipe away my large freckle. The alarms in my mind started going off. Even if I did have something on my chest, It was not appropriate for him to touch me. I immediately stood up. "It's a freckle." I walked to my kitchen. "I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat, and you can let me know if you want to buy those later." I started fiddling with stuff in the kitchen as I waited for Joe to let himself out. Instead, Joe gets off the couch and approaches me. He said, "Give me a hug, girl," and then forcefully wrapped his arms around me with one hand on my butt. At that point, my instincts kicked in. I pushed Joe away and said, "You need to leave now. You're scaring me." Joe walked towards the door, apologizing and trying to claim that he didn't see me like that. Luckily, he left without an issue. At first, I was scared to tell my boyfriend about what happened because I thought he would be mad at me for letting him in our home, but I ended up breaking down to him that night. He wasn't mad, but told me he didn't think it was a good idea for me to talk to Joe again. For days after that, I received a lot of texts from Joe. He asked me if my boyfriend was jealous and kept trying to set times for us to meet up again. I ignored them. About a week after the incident, I had my door open as I was cleaning up. Out of nowhere, I hear a loud crunch. I paused, confused, but quickly realized that it was someone walking across the leaves. Joe. I ran to the door and slammed it shut and locked it. I sat on my couch and turned on my TV loudly. I could still hear him pounding on the door, saying, "Cupcake Dino, are you okay? I just want to talk. Cupcake Dino." I started to cry, scared that he may try to get in, but then it stopped. A few minutes later, I received a bunch of angry texts from Joe, saying that he just wanted to be my friend and that he was done with me. After that, I didn't talk to Joe again. I changed my number to make sure of it. We did eventually get to the point where we could throw a friendly wave. Thankfully, my boyfriend and I moved, so I no longer have to deal with the awkwardness. I learned not to let anyone into my home that I do not fully trust, even if they seem like a lonely old man who just needs a friend.